No one noticed the small alien child at first. The transit platform was loud, crowded, and impatient. Cargo drones hummed overhead, security lights swept back and forth, and hundreds of feet moved with one shared goal: get home, get warm, get away. In a place like that, silence was invisible, and the alien girl's voice was barely louder than the rain. "Sir, my mom never came back." Elias Rowan stopped walking. He did not know why. He had ignored 1,000 things like that before: complaints, arguments, tears, excuses. The city trained people to keep moving. Pausing meant risk. Pausing meant responsibility. But something in the way the words were spoken, not screamed, not begged, cut through the noise and reached him anyway. He turned. The girl stood near the edge of the platform, small and shaking. Her skin was pale blue with faint silver patterns along her cheeks, markings of the Trayloni species. Her clothes were thin, clearly patched more than once, and soaked through by the mist drifting in from the open rail line. She could not have been older than 8. People passed her without looking. Elias felt his jaw tighten. He approached slowly, careful not to scare her. When he stopped in front of her, she looked up, eyes wide and glassy, holding something tight against her chest, a worn identification tag, cracked and bent. "She said she'd be back before the lights changed," the girl continued quietly. "They changed twice." Elias crouched to her level. He was human, broad-shouldered, wearing a maintenance jacket with faded insignia. Not a soldier. Not an official. Just another worker trying to survive a megacity built by too many species and owned by too few. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarali," she replied. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. "Not yet." "And your mother?" "Raina." Elias nodded once. He glanced around the platform, then back at her. "Where does she work?" Sarali pointed down the transit line toward the industrial sector. "Waste filtration. Night shift. She cleans the lower chambers." Elias exhaled slowly. Everyone knew those chambers. Everyone avoided them. "Did anyone else help you?" he asked. She shook her head. "They said, workers go missing sometimes. That I should go home." "And did you?" "I waited," she said. "Then I came here." Something inside Elias settled into place. The same feeling he got before choosing the harder option. The one that cost time, comfort, and sometimes blood. He stood and took off his jacket, placing it around her shoulders. She stiffened at first, then clutched it like it might vanish. "Stay close to me," he said. "We're going to find answers." Sarali searched his face. "You don't have to." "I know," Elias said. "That's why I will." They moved off the platform and into the lower transit tunnels, where the lights dimmed and the city's heartbeat grew louder. Pipes rattled along the walls, carrying waste, water, and heat. The air smelled sharp and metallic. As they walked, Sarali spoke in fragments. Her mother was always tired, always careful. She never missed a shift end without sending a message. Never. Elias listened. Humans were good at that, even when others assumed they weren't. Listening had kept his crew alive years ago during a station collapse that corporate security later claimed never happened. They reached a security gate marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Elias scanned it with his wrist unit. Red light. Restricted. Sarali stopped. "I'm not allowed past this." Elias smiled faintly. "Neither am I." He knelt, removed a thin tool from his sleeve, and slid it into the panel seam. A soft click followed. The red light flickered, then turned green. Sarali stared. "How did you do that?" "Humans," he said simply. "We fix things when they break." Inside, the filtration sector was worse than the city remembered. Steam filled the corridors. The floor vibrated with pressure surges. Warning lights flashed where no one stood to see them. They found Raina near the third chamber. She was alive, but barely. She lay against a coolant pipe, breathing shallowly, her leg twisted at a wrong angle. A collapsed access panel lay nearby, its safety lock shattered. Sarali ran to her, crying out. Elias was already moving. He checked Raina's pulse. Weak. Her skin was cold, far too cold. He activated his emergency beacon, overriding its civilian limiters. Medical priority, he said into the unit. Non-human worker. Critical condition. Location tagged. Static answered him. Then a voice. Beacon unauthorized, the voice said flatly. Stand by. Elias looked at Sarali, then at Raina's unconscious form. No, he said. He lifted Raina carefully, ignoring the pain as the pipe heat burned his arms through the jacket. Sir. Sarali whispered. What are you doing? Elias met her eyes. I'm doing what your mother did, he said. Working anyway. And somewhere far above them, systems that had not been designed to care began to notice something unusual. A human refusing to walk away. The emergency corridors were not meant for feet. They were meant for machines, maintenance crawlers, repair drones, automated carts that moved fast and never asked questions. The walls were narrow, the ceiling low, and the air tasted like old metal and burned filters. Elias moved through it anyway, carrying Raina against his chest while Sarali followed close enough to hold the edge of his jacket. Behind them, the filtration chamber kept roaring, uncaring. Ahead of them, the city's help waited, slow, cold, and conditional. Elias's wrist unit beeped again. A message flashed across the small screen. Unauthorized medical beacon. Stand by for security escort. Security escort. Not medical. Elias felt his teeth grind together. In Orland Prime, the corporations did not send doctors first. They sent guards, paperwork, and blame. Raina stirred slightly in his arms, a faint noise escaping her throat. Her skin was icy. The bruising around her side looked wrong, too dark, too fast. Elias had seen that before in industrial accidents. It meant internal damage. It meant time was bleeding away. Sarali looked up at him with wet eyes. Is she dying? Elias's voice stayed steady, but his grip tightened. Not if I get her out fast. He turned down a service ramp, avoiding the main corridor. On the other route, security scanners would catch them. They would secure the scene. They would separate the child. They would ask why Raina was there, why she failed safety protocols, why the beacon was activated without authorization. They would talk until the body got cold. Not today. The ramp dropped into a lower maintenance trench. Water dripped from above in slow, irregular taps. The lights were dim, but Elias had worked these lines before. He knew the angles. He knew where the cameras were dead. Sarali's bare feet slapped softly against the wet floor. Elias glanced at her. How long have you been out here? She hesitated. Since the second light change. He understood. She had been waiting a long time. Too long. A child that young shouldn't be walking these tunnels alone. He kept moving. If you get tired, tell me. She nodded quickly. I won't. That answer carried a kind of stubborn courage that made Elias's chest ache. They reached an intersection where 3 corridors met. On the wall, a faded warning sign was half peeled away. Hazard zone. Biofilter leak history. Elias paused. The smell here was different. Sharper. Like disinfectant fighting rot. Raina's breathing hitched. Elias lowered her slightly and looked closer at her neck. Beneath her silver-patterned skin, faint dark lines ran like spiderwebs. His stomach turned. Poisoning. Not the kind from food. Not bacteria. This looked like chemical exposure, something designed to break down organic matter. Sarali saw his expression change. What is it? Elias didn't lie. He just chose his words. She was exposed to something in there. We need a real med station. Not corporate security. Sarali swallowed hard. The clinics won't take us. They don't take Trayloni workers unless you pay, Elias finished. Her silence confirmed it. Elias looked down the corridor to the left. That path led to the surface sectors, where the official clinic entrances were. Cameras. Guards. Paperwork. Delay. The corridor to the right led deeper, toward older tunnels that connected to the abandoned engineering bay. That bay still had emergency equipment from the pre-corporate days. Old human systems. Hardwired, not cloud-controlled. Unregulated. Exactly what the corporations hated. Elias shifted Rainer's weight again. Pain shot through his arms, but he ignored it. He chose the right corridor. Sareli blinked. Where are we going? To a place that still remembers what emergency means, Elias said. They moved deeper into the city's bones. The further they went, the older the metal became. The cleaner signs disappeared. The lights flickered. The hum of modern systems faded behind them, replaced by the quiet groan of aging infrastructure. Sareli's breathing sounded louder here. Elias noticed she was starting to shake again, not just from cold, but fear. He slowed enough to let her catch up. Sareli, look at me. She looked up. You did the hardest part already, he said. You didn't give up. You found someone. Now you stay with me and you do exactly what I say. Okay. Her lips trembled. Then she nodded. Okay. They reached a sealed hatch. No corporate logo. No scanning panel. Just an old rotary lock and a faded human warning stamped into the metal. Manual access. Keep clear during pressure shifts. Elias smiled, almost bitterly. Finally. Something honest. He set Rainer down carefully against the wall and pulled out a small toolkit. Sareli watched, wide-eyed, as he removed a strip of wire and twisted it into the lock mechanism. Is that allowed? She whispered. Elias's eyes didn't leave the hatch. Most important things aren't. The lock clicked. The hatch groaned open. Cold air spilled out. Not dirty air. Clean. Inside was an old engineering bay, large enough to hold service vehicles and maintenance platforms. Most of it was dark, but emergency strips along the floor still glowed a faint green. A few dormant machines stood like sleeping giants under dust covers. And on the far wall, Elias saw it. A red metal cabinet with the symbol of an old human medical service unit. He carried Rainer inside, moving faster now. Sareli ran to keep up. Elias opened the cabinet. Inside were supplies, aged but sealed. Injectors. Trauma wraps. Field scanners. The kind of equipment humans once used when they couldn't depend on anyone else. He grabbed the scanner first and ran it over Rainer's torso. The screen flashed numbers. Warning symbols. Then a single line that made Elias go still. Biofilter toxin. Active. Time since exposure. 3+ hours. Neural failure risk. High. Elias's breath turned sharp. Sareli grabbed his arm. What does it mean? Elias swallowed. He felt the edge of anger rise in his chest, hot and dangerous. It means she was left in that chamber for hours, he said. With poison in her blood. And nobody cared enough to check. Sareli's eyes filled again. But she's a worker. They need her. Elias looked at her then, really looked. That's the lie they sell, he said quietly. They don't need her. They need the work. If she dies, they replace her. Sareli froze at those words, like her mind refused to accept them. Elias didn't soften it. Not because he was cruel, but because humans learned something the galaxy often forgot. Truth is heavy, but it makes you strong. He pulled out an injector. The label was faded, but readable. Antitoxin. Field grade. He hesitated. Field grade meant risk. It meant side effects. It meant the dose might not be perfect for a Trayloni physiology. But doing nothing was worse. Sareli's small voice broke. Please. Save her. Elias looked at the injector in his hand. Then he remembered the way Sareli stood alone on the platform, invisible to the world, refusing to leave. He remembered the way Rainer had kept working in a system that would never love her. And he made a decision that would ripple further than he could imagine. Hold her hand, he told Sareli. Sareli grabbed Rainer's limp fingers with both of hers, pressing her forehead to her mother's knuckles. Elias injected the antitoxin into Rhaenyra's upper arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Rhaenyra's body convulsed. Sarayli screamed. Elias caught Rhaenyra's shoulders, keeping her from slamming her head against the floor. The scanner beeped wildly. Her breath turned ragged, like her lungs were fighting. Elias's heart hammered. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, stay with us." Rhaenyra's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first, full of pain. Then they found Sarayli. Her lips moved, barely audible. "Sarayli." Sarayli sobbed, pressing closer. "Mom. Mom, I'm here." Rhaenyra tried to lift her hand, but she was too weak. Elias supported her elbow. She looked at Elias, confusion mixing with fear. "Who?" "A human," Elias said. "And you're going to live if you don't give up." Rhaenyra's breathing steadied slightly. The dark lines in her skin faded a fraction, as if the antitoxin was pushing back. Sarayli turned to Elias like he was the only solid thing in the world. "You did it." Elias didn't smile, because outside the bay, he heard something else. A new sound. Boots. Multiple. Heavy. And moving with purpose. Elias's wrist unit beeped again. Security escort arriving. Unauthorized activity detected. Submit for questioning. Sarayli's face drained. "They found us." Elias looked toward the hatch, then back at the old bay equipment. He did not panic. Humans didn't survive by panicking. They survived by thinking faster than the people trying to control them. He picked up the scanner again, eyes narrowing. If security was here, it meant two things. 1. The system cared more about control than saving a life. 2. Someone, somewhere, had noticed a human breaking the rules. And humans were very good at turning rules into weapons. Elias lowered his voice. "Sarayli, I need you to be brave again." She nodded, trembling. "Okay." Elias moved to an old control console, wiped dust off the surface, and flipped a physical switch. The bay's emergency lights flared brighter. A deep mechanical hum woke up beneath the floor. Sarayli's eyes widened. "What is that?" Elias's mouth tightened into a thin line. "An old evacuation rail," he said. "Built before the corporations owned everything. And they forgot it exists." The boots outside grew louder. A voice echoed through the hatch. "This is corporate safety enforcement. Open the door and step out. You are in violation of industrial protocol." Elias looked down at Rhaenyra, then at Sarayli. He leaned close to the child and whispered the sentence that would change everything. "Tell me, does your mother have a work badge?" Sarayli blinked, confused. "Yes." "Good," Elias said. "Because we're about to use their own system against them." The hatch shook as someone struck it. Elias reached for the cabinet again, pulled out a coil of shock tape, and began wrapping it around the hatch seam with calm hands. Sarayli stared. "What are you doing?" Elias didn't look up. "Buying us a few moments." Rhaenyra tried to speak, weakly. "Security, we'll take." Sarayli. Elias's eyes hardened. "Not today," he said. And as the bay's old rail system began to power up, Elias Rowan prepared to do what humans did best when trapped. He was going to improvise a way out. And he was going to make sure the entire city, maybe the entire sector, heard exactly why. The hatch buckled inward with a metallic scream. Shock tape flared blue as security tools struck it, sending sparks across the old steel. Elias felt the vibration through the floor, through his bones. The corporations had not forgotten this place by accident. They had abandoned it because it didn't answer to them fast enough. The evacuation rail beneath the bay hummed louder. Rhaenyra groaned softly. Sarayli knelt beside her mother, holding her hand, whispering words Elias couldn't hear over the rising noise. They were not prayers. Trelawney didn't pray much. They believed survival was built, not granted. Elias respected that. He moved fast now, fingers flying over the ancient console. No touch screen. No cloud login. Just physical switches, levers, and indicator lights. Human design from a time when systems were meant to work even if the world above them burned. "Rail is live," Elias muttered. "Power holding." A crack split the hatch seam. A voice barked from outside, amplified and sharp. "Last warning. You are interfering with corporate recovery operations." Elias laughed once. Not loud. Not kind. "Funny," he said under his breath. "So was leaving her to die." Sareli looked up at him. "What are they going to do?" Elias didn't soften the answer. "They'll try to take your mother. Then they'll say she violated safety rules. Then they'll erase this place from the report." Sareli's jaw tightened. Tears streaked her face, but something harder formed behind her eyes. "I won't let them." Elias nodded. "Good. Because neither will I." Raina suddenly inhaled sharply. Her back arched, and the scanner shrieked once before stabilizing. Elias rushed back to her side. Her eyes opened fully this time. Focused. Clear. Too clear. Elias froze. He had seen that look before, not in civilians, not in exhausted workers. It was the look of someone trained to wake up under pressure. Raina's gaze locked onto the hatch, then swept the bay in a fast, practice scan. She noticed the rail console, the cabinet, the sealed supplies. Then she looked at Elias. "You're not security," she said hoarsely. "No," Elias replied. "I fix broken lights." Her lips twitched faintly. "Of course you do." Sareli leaned forward. "Mom, are you okay?" Raina's eyes softened instantly when they landed on her daughter. She lifted a trembling hand and brushed Sareli's cheek. "You came for me." Sareli nodded fiercely. "He helped me. He saved you." Raina looked back at Elias again. This time, something like respect crossed her face. Before she could speak again, the hatch gave way. Metal tore inward, folding under brute force. The shock tape snapped, burned out. 3 figures stormed in. Corporate safety enforcement. Tall. Armored. Faceless behind mirrored visors. Their weapons were not pointed yet, but they were ready. The lead officer's voice boomed. "Step away from the patient. This individual is under corporate jurisdiction." Elias stood up slowly, placing himself between them and Raina. "She's under my jurisdiction right now," he said calmly. The officer tilted his head slightly. "You have no authority here, human." Elias shrugged. "Then why are you talking to me instead of dragging her out?" The officer paused. That pause was everything. Raina shifted, trying to sit up. Sareli supported her. The second officer noticed the scanner still running. "Sir, biofilter toxin exposure confirmed. She should not have been removed." Raina laughed weakly. Left wasn't an option. The lead officer raised a hand. "Enough. This unit will be transferred to medical holding. The child will be processed separately." Sareli gasped and clutched Raina's arm. "No." Elias's voice dropped, cold and sharp. "Try it." Weapons lifted slightly. Tension snapped tight. And then Raina spoke again. "Officer," she said, voice steady despite her condition. "Before you take me anywhere, you may want to check my blood registry." The lead officer hesitated. "State your worker ID." Raina smiled faintly. "I don't have one." Silence fell. "That's not possible," the officer said. "Oh," Raina replied. "It is. Because I don't belong to your workforce." Elias turned, eyes narrowing. "Raina." She looked at him, something old and dangerous in her gaze. "I cleaned floors because it kept my daughter fed. Not because it was the only thing I could do." The officer's wrist unit beeped. Then beeped again. Then emitted a sharp warning tone. His visor shifted slightly as he read. The other 2 officers stiffened. "What is it?" one asked. The lead officer's voice lost its confidence. "Her genetic profile, it's restricted." Raina closed her eyes briefly. I told them not to run it, she murmured. I stayed quiet. I stayed useful. Sareli looked between them. Mom. Raina took her daughter's face gently in both hands. Sareli, there's something you need to know. The officers backed up half a step without realizing it. Elias felt the air change. Not fear. Recognition. Raina looked at Elias again. You should leave. Before this becomes bigger than you. Elias shook his head once. Too late. The officer swallowed. Your genetic markers match a classified Trayloni lineage. A pre-unification research caste. Elias's breath caught. Research caste. Those weren't cleaners. They were designers. Problem solvers. The minds behind bioengineering systems the galaxy depended on, but never credited. Raina nodded. My people built the first biofilters you profit from. We learned how to break toxins down at the molecular level. Elias looked at the scanner again. At the toxin reading. At the slow stabilization. You survived longer than expected, he said quietly. Raina smiled without humor. Because my blood fought back. The lead officer's voice shook now. You should have declared yourself. And lost my daughter, Raina replied. You disappear people like me. The officer didn't deny it. Sareli stared at her mother, stunned. You're important. Raina kissed her forehead. You are. A new sound rolled through the bay. Not boots. Engines. Heavy ones. Elias turned toward the far wall as lights flared beyond the old bay doors. Raina's eyes widened slightly. No, not already. The officer stepped back further. This situation is above my clearance. Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. What did you do? He asked Raina. She met his gaze. I didn't do anything. Then she looked at Sareli. You did. Sareli blinked. Me. Raina nodded slowly. You triggered a human. Elias exhaled sharply. Outside, a deep voice echoed through the ancient bay speakers. Clear, calm, and unmistakably non-corporate. This is an independent human vessel responding to an unauthorized emergency beacon. Elias's heart slammed into his ribs. The voice continued. Stand down. You are interfering with a civilian rescue. The officers froze. Elias whispered, almost to himself, that signal, it reached off-world. Raina nodded. Humans listen to other humans. The bay lights flickered as something massive locked into place beyond the walls. Sareli squeezed Elias's hand without realizing it. Elias squeezed back. Because the story was no longer about saving one woman. It was about what happened when a system built on silence met a species that refused to stay quiet. The bay trembled as something vast settled into position above it. Dust drifted down from the ceiling in slow sheets. Old lights flickered, then stabilized, drawing power from systems that had not been touched in decades. The sound was not violent. It was controlled. Precise. Human. Elias felt it in his chest before he understood it in his mind. A docking clamp locked in place with a deep, resonant thud. The corporate officers stood frozen, weapons half raised, half forgotten. Their training did not cover moments like this. They were designed to dominate workers, not negotiate with equals. Raina exhaled slowly. They came fast. Elias looked at her. You expected them. I hoped they wouldn't, she replied. But humans don't ignore distress calls. Not real ones. The speakers crackled again. This is the independent vessel wayfarer's oath, the voice said. We have visual confirmation of armed corporate enforcement surrounding injured civilians. You are ordered to disengage. The lead officer finally found his voice. You have no jurisdiction here. This facility is corporate-owned. A pause. Then the human voice replied, calm and almost gentle. So was the last one. Before we pulled the ownership records and found 17 safety violations, 9 undocumented deaths, and 1 missing child. Sareli's breath hitched. Elias glanced down at her. They know about you. The officer's visor flickered as new data poured in. Elias could almost see the panic behind it. You're overstepping, the officer snapped. This is an internal matter. Funny thing about internal matters, the voice replied. They stop being internal when people start dying. A new sound filled the bay. Footsteps. Not boots. Magnetic soles, lighter, faster, moving with purpose. A side access door hissed open, and 3 humans entered. They wore no corporate markings. No uniforms. Just layered armor, scuffed and repaired, with the same simple symbol on each shoulder, a circle broken by a single line. The sign of independent responders. Elias felt something loosen inside him. Not relief. Recognition. The lead human, a woman with close-cropped hair and sharp eyes, took in the scene in seconds. Her gaze landed on Reiner, then Sarali, then Elias. You the one who activated the beacon? She asked. Elias nodded. She needed help. The woman's mouth tightened. That's usually enough. She turned to the officers. Lower your weapons. This is not your, one officer began. The woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She simply lifted her wrist and projected a hologram into the air. It showed a live feed. City cameras. Worker records. Shift logs. Faces. Names. Dates. Missing. This rescue is being broadcast, she said. Right now. Across 3 networks. Including ones your shareholders watch. The officers stiffened. You fire, she continued, and the galaxy watches you do it. Silence stretched. The lead officer lowered his weapon. Then the others followed. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The woman knelt beside Reiner, pulling out a med scanner far more advanced than the one in the cabinet. Her expression shifted as she read the data. Biofilter toxin, she muttered. Old formula. Nasty. Reiner nodded. Designed by my people. The woman looked up sharply. Your Trayloni research cast. Reiner met her gaze. Former. The woman's eyes softened. There's no such thing. She turned to Sarali. Hey. You did good. Sarali blinked. I just asked. The woman smiled. That's how it starts. Behind them, the corporate officers received a new message. Elias saw the alert flash across one visor. Stand down. Legal oversight inbound. The system was already protecting itself. Too late. Elias watched as the humans moved with quiet efficiency, stabilizing Reiner, wrapping her leg, preparing a transport stretcher. No forms. No delays. Just action. The woman stood and faced Elias. You're Elias Rowan. He frowned. How do you know that? She smirked. You filed a complaint 3 years ago about a collapsed station light that killed 6 dock workers. Corporate buried it. Elias's chest tightened. Someone remembered. She nodded. Humans did. Reiner reached for Elias's sleeve. They'll come back, she said quietly. Not here. Somewhere else. They always do. Elias met her eyes. Then we don't stop here. The woman straightened. You planning to join us? Elias hesitated. He thought about his quiet room. His reheated meals. His job fixing lights no one thanked him for. Then he looked at Sarali. At the way she stood straighter now. Less small. Less invisible. He made his choice. Yes, he said. The woman nodded once. Good. Because this doesn't end with a rescue. Outside the bay, the Wayfarer's Oath disengaged from its clamp, lifting slowly. Lights from the city followed it. Thousands of eyes suddenly aware of something they had been trained not to see. A human ship refusing to leave. A child who would not be silent. A worker who was never supposed to matter. As Reiner was lifted onto the stretcher, she squeezed Sarali's hand. Listen to me, she said softly. What happens next will be hard. Sareli nodded. I'm not scared. Reiner smiled, proud and sad all at once. Good. Because the truth is about to spread. Elias watched the corporate officers retreat, their authority shrinking with every step. He understood then. The galaxy didn't change because of wars or treaties. It changed because of moments like this. When a system built to ignore suffering ran into a species that refused to accept it. And humans? Humans didn't ask permission to care. They just did.